Monday, March 20th, 2017, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I like to talk about David Rockefeller. He died today at age 101. He was the grandson of John D. Rockefeller. John David Davison Rockefeller Sr. was an American oil industry business magnate and philanthropist. He's widely considered the wealthiest American of all time and the richest person in modern history, according to Wikipedia. Interesting that how they call these people philanthropists. I know they did give a lot to endowments, charities, but that's only one side of the story. So the New York Times reports today, and I read from the New York Times, David Rockefeller, philanthropist and head of Chase Manhattan, dies at 101. So 101. Chase Manhattan Bank, of course, was taken over, I think, in the late 90s by JP Morgan. So it became JP Morgan Chase. It says here in the obituary or in the article in the New York Times, David Rockefeller, the banker and philanthropist with the fabled family name who controlled Chase Manhattan Bank for more than a decade and wielded vast influence around the world, even longer as he spread the gospel of American capitalism, died on Monday morning at his home in Pocantico Hills, New York. He was 101. So why am I talking about John D. Rockefeller? Well, years ago, I think in the 90s, he wrote his autobiography called Memoirs. And on page 405, he said, and I quote, some even believe we, meaning the Rockefeller family, are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, in quotes, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. So he actually said that in page 405 of his book called Memoirs. Very interesting. And one thing about the New York article that I read here, it mentioned nothing about Standard Oil's activities during World War II. And Mr. Rockefeller, David Rockefeller, was born in 1915. So by the time the U.S. entered World War II in 1941, he was already 25, 26. So he was a grown adult by that time, a young man, I guess. And there's an article here from The Thistle, which is MIT's student newspaper, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So that's a mainstream university in Boston, Massachusetts, MIT, very famous university. And it's an article from volume 13, number 2, December to January 2000 to 2001. And it's entitled The People's History of the United States. And it talks about the Rockefellers and Standard Oil. And I quote here from this article. It says, after the Rockefellers, the next largest stockholder in Standard Oil was IG Farben, the giant German chemical company. This investment was part of a pattern of reciprocal investments between the U.S. and Germany during the Nazi years. During the Great Depression, Germany was viewed as a hot area in which to invest. And it goes on, I continue. It says, a brief aside is required here to explain what type of company IG Farben, or as the Germans call it, IG Farben, actually was. At the time, it was the world's largest chemical company, and through the talents of its scientists and engineers, it secured the vital self-sufficiency that was to enable Germany to maneuver in the world of power politics. From its laboratories and factories flowed the strategic raw materials that Germany's own territory could not supply. The synthetics of oil, gasoline, rubber, nitrates, and fibers. In addition, IG produced vaccines and drugs such as salvarsan, aspirin, atabrine, and novocaine, along with sulfur drugs, as well as poison gases and rocket fuels. The depth of IG Farben's connection to Nazi policy was finally realized at Auschwitz, the extermination center where 4 million people were destroyed in accordance with Hitler's final solution of the Jewish question. Drawn by the seemingly limitless supply of death camp labor, Farben built IG Auschwitz, a huge industrial complex designed to produce synthetic rubber and oil. This installation used as much electricity as the entire city of Berlin, and more than 25,000 camp inmates died during its construction. IG Farben eventually built its own concentration camp known as Monowitz, which was closer to the site of the complex than Auschwitz was, in order to eliminate the need to march prisoners several miles to and from the plant every day. So you get the gist there. And it goes on to say, though, this was the company enthusiastically embraced by Standard Oil, which is the company that David Rockefeller's father, John D. Rockefeller, founded, as well as other major American corporations like DuPont and General Motors. And the author goes on to say, I do not, however, state that Standard Oil collaborated with the Nazis simply because IG Farben was its second largest shareholder. In fact, without the explicit help of Standard Oil, the Nazi Air Force would never have gotten off the ground in the first place. The planes that made up the Luftwaffe needed tetraethyl lead gasoline in order to fly. At the time, only Standard Oil, DuPont, and General Motors had the ability to produce this vital substance. In 1938, Walter C. Teagle, then president of Standard Oil, helped Hermann Schmitz of IG Farben to acquire 500 tons of tetraethyl lead from Ethel, a British Standard subsidiary. A year later, Schmitz returned to London and obtained an additional $15 million worth for tetraethyl lead, which was to be turned into aviation gasoline back in Germany. So, and it goes on to say, after the war began in Europe, the English became angry about U.S. shipments of strategic materials to Nazi Germany. Standard Oil immediately changed the registration of their entire fleet to Panamanian to avoid British search or seizure. These ships continued to carry oil to Tenerife in the Canary Islands, where they refueled and siphoned oil to German tankers for shipment to Hamburg, Germany. And it goes on to say this deception was exposed on March 31st, 1941, when the U.S. State Department issued a detailed report on refueling stations in Mexico and Central and South America that were suspected of furnishing oil to Italian and German merchant vessels. The report listed Standard Oil of New Jersey and Standard Oil of California among those fueling enemy ships, but there's no record of any action being taken as a result of this discovery. Similar deals between Standard Oils and the Japanese government, another enemy of the Allies, for the purchase of tetraethyl lead have also been uncovered, but no direct action was taken against Standard Oil for its dealings with America's enemies. A brief side note, however, is that on April 17, 1945, the Chase National Bank was placed on trial in federal court on charges of having violated the Trading with Enemy Act by converting German marks into U.S. dollars. Because many countries refused to accept German currency during the war, the Nazis used foreign banks like Chase to change the currency into money that would be accepted, and thus allow them to purchase much needed materials to prolong the war the closer one looks, the more ties one finds between American business and Nazi Germany, many of which remain strong well into and beyond the war. So very interesting. The Bank for International Settlements as well. On their board during the war was the head of the Reichsbank. So the bankers were dealing with the Nazis while, the sheeple, or the people, so to speak, were fighting and killing each other. It does note here that David Rockefeller actually served in North Africa during World War II. But very interesting, that, he might have been a philanthropist, but they could also say that his family was a war profiteering family that dealt with the Nazis, but the New York Times chose to ignore that completely. It's no wonder, that people, are sick and tired of the mainstream media, and that they're like, fake news might be, something to call them, but also they don't give you the whole story. They just pick the parts that will make this guy look good, him and his family. And I've made a video in the past. I think it was just after Christmas last year. It's called The War Racket, Liberty Bonds, and the Gold Confiscation of 1933. I'll put the video above in the cards information. You can watch that video, and it's about Major General Smedley Butler, who wrote this book here called War is a Racket. And he just goes on to say how the big corporations like General Motors, DuPont, Standard Oil, they all make fortunes out of war. And it's too early to see what Donald Trump's is going to be like a president. He seems quite hawkish. He seems to be looking for trouble, with other countries like North Korea, even though North Korea is provoking, the West. But in an ideal world for me would be to have a president, Ron Paul. I'm sure Ron Paul would rein back, the American empire on all the bases and military forces the U.S. has around the world, basically to defend the big corporations' interest and to provoke, and to keep other countries, following their instructions. If you don't do as we say, we'll, try to start a coup. If we fail, we'll try to kill your president or whatever. So, David Rockefeller is dead at age 101. He lived a long time. And I'm not saying this is the end of the Rockefellers and their power and influence in government, but I just wanted to touch upon the fact that aside from being a philanthropist, the Rockefellers were war profiteers, or are still, make, billions upon billions from the misery of others. And I'm not making this up. It's all fact. I'll put the links to the MIT article below in the description. So if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. That would be nice. Share it far and wide. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. If you'd like to donate to the channel, there's some links below in the description. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.